Aloha and welcome to session 9 of our Adobe Premiere tutorials. We're going to talk briefly about using transitions in this one. So if we look at our project here, there's no shortage of places that we can try transitions. I'm going to start working with the B-roll and the titles first. This is a pretty subtle, pretty easy thing to do. So here, where I add Scott's lower third,
And welcome to my kitchen. Today we'll be talking about how to make...
rather than have the title appear on screen and then disappear so abruptly, I want that to kind of fade in and fade out. So I'm going to do that by putting a dissolve at the beginning and a dissolve at the end. This all starts by going to the project pane in the bottom left-hand corner and clicking on the Effects tab. And what that will open is you'll see I've got a series of categories here. Some presets, if I had saved any. Lumetri presets. Lumetri deals with color balance. Audio effects, audio transitions, video effects, and video transitions. And this is the category that we're interested in right now. So if I click that down arrow, you'll see that it opens into more categories. There's some 3D ones, dissolves, immersive video, iris, page peel, slide, wipe, zoom. Some of these are self-explanatory, and some of them just play with. You're not going to hurt anything. I'm looking for a dissolve, so I'm going to hit the little down arrow beside the dissolve category, and holy cow, there's more than one to choose from. The basic dissolve, when you think about fading in or fading out or fading from one image to another, is called a cross dissolve. And you'll see that there's, at least in mine, there's a little blue box around it saying that's my default transition. So there's a shortcut I can use to apply this, but I'll show you that in a minute. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and drag the little icon for the cross dissolve, and I'm going to pull it over here and I'm going to drop it on the head end of my title right there. So click, drag, and drop. And you can see that it appeared there. Let me zoom in just a little bit so we can see better. So here's my title, and here's the cross dissolve. And if I play that,
Welcome to my kitchen. Today we'll be talking about how to make the...
look at how smoothly that fades in. And I can do the same thing to make it fade out. So again, I'm just going to grab my cross dissolve and drag it and drop it here on the tail end of that piece of title. And now it should fade nicely out.
perfect cup of cappuccino. We'll start with...
Lovely. If I single click on these, and you have to be a little bit careful where you put your mouse now. If I click in the middle, I've selected that entire title. So were I to do something like hit delete, the whole thing would be gone. Let me undo that, Command Z. But I can also click on the dissolve itself. So if I wanted to get rid of that, I could hit delete and it would remove the dissolve, but it would leave the clip behind it, or the title behind it in this case, intact. Let me undo that. I can also double click on it and I'll get this little pop-up window. So by default, this is a 1 second dissolve. And every time I do this is going to be a 1 second dissolve. I want to change this to half a second, so that would be 15 frames. So I'm just going to change that to 15. Okay. And you'll notice that the icon got shorter. And I can do the same thing here if I double click that. If I click and grab the end of it, I can actually drag it, so I can change the duration dynamically that way. So I'll drag that down to 15 frames. That also works. You'll notice how that when I get right near the edge of the dissolve itself, the cursor changes on the mouse. Zooming in is really important on this. If I zoom out, let me just zoom out to the whole width of the timeline. You can't see those icons at all. So if you're trying to add a transition or trying to change a transition when you're zoomed way out like this, it just can't be done. Right, let me zoom in a bit and see them. And likewise, if your video tracks or your audio tracks are really small, these become hard to see and hard to manipulate. So again, if I hold the Command key while hitting the plus button on the keyboard, I can make the video tracks taller, all of them taller, or Command and minus makes them all smaller. Or I can do them one at a time by coming over here to the left and clicking and dragging. So resizing the tracks in addition to zooming in and out becomes important when you're manipulating these. All right, let's just move down the timeline a little bit here. So I'm going to do the same thing with my B-roll here. I'm going to have the titles fade in and out for the B-roll. So I'm going to click that first one. Now again, I could click and drag this over. There is a shortcut for applying the default transition. And my default transition, I can see the little blue box there is the cross dissolve. That is Command D. All right, so you see I hit Command D and my cross dissolve popped up. That's going to have to be much shorter than that, though. I'm thinking about 10 frames. And the same thing here. I'm going to hit, notice I single click on that edge of the thing so it's selected. Command D, double click that, take it down to 10 frames. Let's see how that works.
Have a light roast.
I'm not 100% happy with that, but we'll leave it be for now. I can actually, if I click the title, right, I'm sorry, if I click the transition, you notice I single clicked the transition itself, I can hit Command C for copy, and then I can come over here, I can click the edge, the end point of this piece of B-roll, and hit Command V for paste. And do the same thing for the out point.
A medium roast.
Again, if I select that edge, I already copied the perfect one, so I'm just going to paste it. And then just to demonstrate this again, the long way to do it is to grab the transition, drag it into place, and then if I need to change the time, I'll double click it, and I'll change that down to 10 frames. I'm using a really quick dissolve because my title is up there for such a short time.
And a dark roast. So now that we've got our 3 roasts.
All right. So let's go back to the very beginning of the show. So the same thing, I want my title to fade in. So just like I did with my other title, I'm just going to grab a cross dissolve and drop it on the beginning. And so it's going to ramp up. It's dissolving from nothing to the title. But if I actually want to fade out of the title and into Scott in the Kitchen, I'm going to put a cross dissolve between these two. So where the two clips touch, I'll drop my title, my dissolve there.
Hello, I'm Scott and welcome to...
Now this also works between other pieces of video. So let's jump down here. Let me see where I've got a jump cut we can look at.
Beans.
Okay, that's actually fine as a cut, but maybe I just want it to be a dissolve. Again, I would just grab my cross dissolve and drop it here between these two clips. And what will happen is one clip will fade out as the other one fades in.
Grind our beans.
That worked just fine, didn't it? Now here I've got a jump cut between the same shot. I cut a big chunk out of the middle of it. And it's not really that distracting. You can kind of see the coffee reappearing, but I could just as easily put a transition there. It looks a little more subtle, right? And let me jump down here and find something that's terrible.
Ready to go. Now, what?
Okay, so I could have covered this edit with B-roll. I've definitely got the B-roll to do it. But let's pretend that I didn't. And what I'm left with is a jump cut that I want to do something about. So putting a transition here is definitely an option. So let's try the cross dissolve.
And we're ready to go. Now watch close.
Okay, I'm not really crazy about that, about seeing him like ghosting over himself. Let's look at it one more time.
And we're ready to go. Now watch.
See, I just don't think that's the right transition. The transition, a transition can work, but not that transition. So one of my favorites is this dip to black dissolve. And what it will do is it will fade to black and then fade back up, which kind of gives you the impression that some time has passed. Let's try that.
To go. Now watch.
All right, that kind of works, my dip to black. But let's, I'm not 100% happy with it. So maybe, I'm going to delete that. Maybe I'm just looking in the wrong category. Maybe I don't need a dissolve. Maybe I need something different. Let's try a wipe and see what we've got. How about just its barn door wipe here?
Ready to go. Now watch.
And not crazy about that either. Let's go with something more radical. Up here in 3D motion, there's a cube spin. This one's kind of fun to play with. Let me drop that on there and play.
And we're ready to go. Now watch closely.
All right. I'll just stick with that. Again, this is a spot I actually could cover with B-roll, and if I were working this project, I would cover it with B-roll. But I just want to point out you can use transitions between clips as a way to soften a jump cut or to imply the passage of time or that sort of thing. Okay, so that's most of it for transitions. It's really just a click and drag interface. You put the transition where you want it to be, either on the edge of one clip or on the seam between two adjacent clips. And then if you need to make a change to the length of it, you double click it. If you need to make a change to any other attributes, you'll go into your effects control tab, which we haven't talked about, but we'll get there soon.